Okay, so this is what the pick looks like when I'm wearing it up close. The bones in the end of my arm here, I kind of use that ring to wrap around the bones and hook it in place, and then I use the strap to go around the back of my elbow, and then I just pick up and down like so. So that's what it looks like on my arm and how I wear it. You'll notice a couple of like these little black things here. This is actually gaff tape, and I use the gaff tape because my skin gets kind of dry, and it helps to keep from slide. It keeps the pick from sliding off. This is a very old pick, and like I said, we're about to make one from scratch here. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. There's a few things that you need. You're gonna need a riveting tool, which is what this black thing is with the orange handle. You'll need rivets. I like to use the 1/4 inch 5/32 diameter units. And then you're gonna need washers. I use number 6 washers. You'll need a pair of lineman's pliers, possibly a pair of needle nose pliers. The needle nose pliers are kind of optional, but they might make it easier on you. You need a pair of scissors and a needle and thread. You will need some nylon webbing. I like to use the 1/2 inch wide nylon webbing, and you can get the nylon webbing online. This is what it looks like up close. Find a ring that fits your arm specifically. This is a 1 inch ring, or I think it's actually a 1.5 inch ring. And then you'll need some sort of a buckle so that you can customize the size of the strap. My buckle, I kind of keep right here around the backside, not quite on the back of my elbow. I think it would actually be uncomfortable to put it behind my elbow. And I have made them so that the buckles were up closer to the ring here as well. As far as picks go, I like Clayton picks a lot. You'll have to kind of experiment to see what size and diameter and thickness and things like that you like. I personally like to use 1.25 millimeter picks, and I like the D'Addario Cortex picks. I like the 1.25s because they'll bend easily with a little bit of heat, but at the same time, they don't wear down super fast, which means you're not having to change out your picks all the time. Clayton also makes a pretty fantastic pick. This is one of my old picks that came off an old guitar strap that I had. And I had my own signature Lefty Williams series pick from them for a while. And I use those, still the 1.25 millimeter picks. Absolutely adore them. They last a long time. So either the D'Addario Cortex or the Clayton are great. And then the last thing that you're going to need is some way to make a hole in the webbing in the pick. And for that, I usually use some sort of a soldering iron. I've got a really old Radio Shack soldering iron that I don't use for soldering anymore, and it works great. I think I spent like $5 or $10 on this thing forever ago. This is going to be probably about $100 to make the whole pick, you know, tools and all. And then, you know, it takes... Once you get used to it, it takes about, 30, 45 minutes to an hour. So obviously you're going to need a needle and thread and scissors to cut the thread. If you're not comfortable with hand tools or things like that, get somebody to help you that is. Don't do this on your own unless you're good with tools. That is a disclaimer. I'm not going to be responsible for anybody getting hurt. So you take your needle and thread, and what you're going to do is kind of, obviously just tie the thread together, same as you would for any other sewing project. So once you get your approximate length of needle and thread, and it's going to vary depending on your specific needs, you're going to take your first piece. You need a piece that connects to your buckle, right? So you're going to take a piece of the nylon webbing, and you're going to, come out with an approximate measurement. It doesn't have to be perfect, and there's no exact right length or anything like that. You want it to fit on the side of your arm, so you don't want to make it too long. And what I usually do is I will go ahead and sort of measure it out to get the length that I'm looking for out of it. So something like this, which is going to be about that far on my arm. So I might even go a little smaller with this. But at this point, I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna cut it. And then I'm gonna start the process of sewing it together. And you just wanna make sure that, you know, you always wanna think a couple of steps ahead. And so in this case, I'm gonna sew it like this, and it's a little harder to do it this way, but I have found that it tends to make things a little bit easier if you go ahead and sew both sides all in one shot. So it's harder to push the needle through when you do it this way, but it's less sewing to do. You could, if you wanted to, you could open it up this way. You could sew just this side and sew just this side together. It doesn't really matter. There's no right or wrong way to do that. So I'll take, you know, my needle and I'll push it through, and then I just use my arm like so. And just like any other sewing project, you just kind of keep doing it. Yeah, so you might want to have a thimble to keep your fingers safe. But generally what I do is I will start sewing in a pattern up one side, like so. And people that are better at sewing than me would do a better job of this. I learned how to sew just so that I could do this kind of thing. So one thing that I have found over the years that's very helpful is you want this action right here to be as tight as possible. You don't want this to try and move around the ring too much like this. And so the tighter you can get this seam right here against the ring, the better. Because otherwise when you're playing, it'll tend to slide like this, and that can make the ring slide off the end of your arm. All right, so once you get the buckle sewed on, you're ready to go for the next part. One thing that's important at this stage is to make sure that you pay attention to the orientation of the buckle, because if you do it wrong, your buckle will wind up being on the inside, and you don't want that. So what I always do at this point is, so first off, I try to make my folds on the inside of the pick, so against my skin. And then that way, when I get ready to make the other side of the buckle, I know what the orientation is. So I've got my buckle, it's gonna flip over, and it's gonna latch on this side. So the inside has the fold, and then my buckle will latch like so. So on this side, I do the same thing. When I'm making the inside of the pick side, right, and this is the side that's gonna be the pick side, I will make this, I'll overlap this a little bit longer, and I do this for a couple of reasons. The main reason is I want a little extra sturdiness for the pick to attach to. So I will make this long to give that extra support to the pick when I go to attach the pick. So this side, I'll take it and I'll make it a little long. And then what I do is I do an approximate measurement. I just kind of wrap this around the back side of my arm. And then I come up here with it. And then you want to go pretty far past what you think you're going to need. And the reason why you do that is so that you've got a little extra to play with in case you mess up. And this also gives you room for growth too, because as your arm gets bigger, or as you gain weight, as we all do as we get older, you know, it gives you room to kind of loosen the band up. So I'll go a little extra, you know, and it's whatever you think you might need. And just remember, your picks aren't going to last forever. You're going to have to make more than one throughout the course of your life. So it doesn't have to be super huge. But what I'll do is I'll figure out approximately how much I need, and then I'll cut that off here. And then again, you know, just want to double check, make sure we're getting our orientation correct. And so now I've got my fold, and now I just sew this part the same that I did the other one. Now, I also sew this one a little bit differently. You still want to focus on getting it super tight up against the ring, but what I don't like to do on this side is I don't like, if you look real closely at the stitching in here, you'll see I stitched all through the center of this. And I did that for support. I did that to make it strong, but on this one, what I like to do is instead of stitching through the center, what I'll do is I'll do loops around the edge. So I'll start here. And instead of coming back through the center, I just go around the outside. And I just keep going around the outside, and I do my best to try and keep, you know, this lined up as well as possible so that it's nice and clean and straight. And the reason that I go around the edge is because when you go to attach your pick, there's going to be holes here in the middle, right? So if you see my old pick here, I've got these rivets running through the pick, and they run through the back side of this. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to blow through your stitching, because that'll loosen it up and over time it might come off. And so I just do around the outer edge and then all the way on both sides, top and bottom. And then once it's done, I go up here and, you know, I might stitch through a couple of times to get it really tight. So I'm down at the end and I'm just tying off the knot, and I thought, you know, it might be good for you guys to see how I tie this off. So what I do is I just take the loop and I kind of pinch it down with my nub here, and then I go over and then work it through, which is really the hardest part, is getting it through the hole. But once it's through the hole, then I take my nub and I just push it against the table and pull tight. And I've done 4 knots now, so that should be plenty. And I'm going to cut off the excess. And again, you'll see that I'm using my nub to kind of hold things and apply pressure. So I'm pinching down with my nub, and then at the same time I'm pulling on the string and cutting with the scissors. And again, one of the important things on this side, just like on this side, is getting this stitching up against this as tight as possible. So this is actually still too loose. I'm probably going to pull some more stitches through. Like I talked about before, I went around and I just looped around the edges. Then I came across the back end, and then I came across the top here as well. And then, so now that this is done though, you know, we've got our strap. So at this point, we just put the strap on and, you know, figure out how tight we want it to be against our arm. So we'll pull it through and pull it tight, you know, because it does need to be very tight, which is something that I think a lot of people don't realize when they're making these things, is that you do want it to be very, very tight. So then I'll pull that in, and then the next thing that I do is just kind of force this through to make a hole. Now I'm sure that there's better ways to do it, but now it's here, it's on, and to be honest, this is too loose. I actually need it tighter than this. So I'm gonna pull it tighter, and I'm gonna make another hole. All right, and then what I do is I take my excess, and I usually just kind of fold it up a couple of times, like this. And that's really what I do with it. So this is a strap. It's here, it's on, it works. Now with the webbing, what you'll find is it's gonna stretch a little bit over time. So you're gonna wind up having to probably redo this a couple of times until you find something that's really tight. And that I can't express enough how tight it needs to be, almost to the point of discomfort. And you know, people always ask me, does it cut off circulation? I've never had a problem with anything like that. I've never had any issues. Now the next thing that we have to do is attach our pick. And before we can attach the pick, we actually need to bend it at an angle like that. And for that, I use the stove. Okay, so the next step is bending up the pick so that it can reach the strings, because you know, when it's on your arm, you don't want the pick to be straight down like that, because then you'd have to bend too hard and your arm probably would get in the way. So what I do is I bend the pick up, as I showed you on my other pick, and I use these things called lineman's pliers to do it. And I like the lineman's pliers because I have found over the years that where I like to bend the pick to is just below the writing here where it says Cortex, right? And so I like to get as much of the pick bent up as possible, but still be able to grab with the rivets. So I'll line up the bottom of the lineman's pliers with the bottom of the writing where it says Cortex, and then all you have to do is just get the pick warm, okay? So I'll hold it over the heat for a second, flip it over, and you want to pay attention, because if you're not paying attention, it'll actually melt the pick. So just get it warm and then push it down on the counter and hold it down until it locks in place. Now, that's not as bent as I want it to be, so I'm just going to go back. I'm going to warm it up a little more. And again, pay attention to the pick, because it'll start to curl up on the edges when it gets too hot. I'm going to go back, I'm going to bend it again, and I'm going to hold it until it's nice and solid, and that's great. That's perfect. I love that angle. So, but you have to do whatever works for you. So now the next part of this is we need to make holes in the pick for the rivets to fit through, and we need to make holes in the strap for the rivets to fit through. And I do that with a soldering iron. The soldering iron's been heating up for a little while. You want to make sure it's nice and hot. If you're, if your parents or if you have an old soldering iron, that's what I like to use. I don't use my brand new nice soldering irons because it pretty much messes up the tip and makes them unusable for any kind of soldering. So what I like to do is I go to I get like the cheapest. This is an old Radio Shack. I don't think that there are any Radio Shacks left, but this is an old Radio Shack, like $5 soldering iron with an adjustable temperature. It's got a 15 watt setting and a 30 watt setting. I set it to the higher setting so that it'll make the holes faster. But I let it get super, super hot. So it's going to sit here for a little while and warm up. And then once it's warmed up, we'll go ahead and attach the pick. Okay, so I think that our soldering iron's hot enough. It may not be yet. I'm a little impatient sometimes, but and it takes a while to warm up. But anyways, the next step is you just burn a small hole through the pick and through the nylon. So it's not quite there yet, but if I push hard, it is working its way through. All right, I'm through the pick. Now I just need to get through the nylon, and there's our hole. We'll do that twice. We'll do one on each side. And you want to be careful when you reposition your pliers. A lot of times I actually prefer to use like a pair of needle nose pliers to catch it in the middle. That way I can just do one on either side and not have to reposition the pliers. If you don't get your hole lined up properly, when you go to attach your rivets, they're going to be really hard to get through. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to reopen this hole because it looks like it closed up a bit when I let go. So I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going to push through again. And one more time. And then on the back side, I'm going to go ahead and pull that little piece out that it cut. And you see the hole. And if you really wanted to make sure that it stays in the exact same place, you could go ahead and attach one of the rivets now. All right, so we've got our riveting tool, and we just slide it in the hole like so. We're going to take the rivet and we're going to push it through the back side on the inside of the pick. And then on the top, I like to put these washers on for stability. And so then it's just like a pair of pliers. You just squeeze the rivet tool until the long piece pops off. And it makes a pretty loud sound like that. So you know when it's happened. And it breaks that little stem off. And so now this one side is attached. Now we just need to attach the other side. Okay, so now I'm going to do the other side of the rivet, or the other side. And again, you just take your soldering iron And you want them spaced out pretty well. You don't want them right on top of each other. So just do the same thing. Just push in, let it melt a hole through. And I'm pushing pretty hard on this, which is why the strap is bending down. And in just a second, it's gonna come through. So we went through. Gonna push my hole again to make the hole a little cleaner. Now on the front side of my pick, I like to space it a little bit, and that just helps me get a slightly different angle from the pick when I'm using it. So what I like to do is to put a washer between the pick and the strap. So I'll go ahead and start this in through the back side. And I push it through the hole. And then once I get it through the hole, I put this little washer on. And then I push the rest of the rivet through the front side. And then I take my second rivet and I put it on. And this is an old, I think I've actually used this rivet before. One of the things that's cool is when you take them apart, sometimes you can reuse parts. And so now we're going to take our riveting tool and we're going to slide this down as far as we can, push it down real hard. And see, one of the things that I'm struggling with right now, so I've got a lot of plastic that melted up from the pick, and that's, you know, that's making it a little hard to push down and get the washer in place. But I'm pushing pretty hard on the washer right now. And I'm actually going to take my pliers and I'm going to try to force it down a little further. There we go. Just because I want to see more of a gap here at the top. And now I'm cranking down my pliers. And it's pulling the washer down and locking it in place. And there we are, the pick's done. This is the final product. You may find that you have different things that you need to do to make it stay on your arm better, or different things that you need to do to make it to fit better. But once you're here, this is it. The pick's done and you can use it. It'll rub up against the strings. Again, you know, like I mentioned earlier in this one's still a little loose for me. I need to tighten it down better, but that's not too bad. And then after this is on, if you find that this part slides too much, you can always just come back in with more thread and tighten down here like we talked about. You just want to sew that in as tight as you can get it. Another thing that I found that works is taking like gaff tape and wrapping it above it and below it to keep it in place. Or you can use glue, you know, whatever means necessary. Figure out what works for you and make that, you know, try it out. Try different things. That's one of the biggest things that you can do with this. Thanks for watching the video. I hope that this helps you out, and please like and subscribe to my channel. Give us a follow, watch our other videos, watch the music videos if you get a chance, and thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you're having a great day. Okay, so now I'm going to do the other side of the rivet, or the other side. And again, you just take your soldering iron, and you want them spaced out pretty well. You don't want them right on top of each other. So just do the same thing. Just push in, let it melt a hole through. And I'm pushing pretty hard on this, which is why the strap is bending down. And in just a second, it's gonna come through. So we went through. Gonna push my hole again to make the hole a little cleaner. Now on the front side of my pick, I like to space it a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll take a rivet, or I mean a washer, and put it behind the pick. And that just helps me get a slightly different angle from the pick when I'm using it. So I get it up underneath here. So what I like to do is to put a washer between the pick and the strap. So I'll go ahead and start this in through the back side. And I push it through the hole. And then once I get it through the hole, I put this little washer on. And then I push the rest of the rivet through the front side. And then I take my second rivet and I put it on. And this is an old, I think I've actually used this rivet before. One of the things that's cool is when you take them apart, sometimes you can reuse parts. And so now we're going to take our riveting tool and we're going to slide this down as far as we can, push it down real hard. And see, one of the things that I'm struggling with right now is that I've got a lot of plastic that melted up from the pick. So I've got a lot of plastic that melted up from the pick, and that's, you know, that's making it a little hard to push down and get the washer in place. But I'm pushing pretty hard on the washer right now. And I'm actually going to take my pliers and I'm going to try to force it down a little further. There we go. Just because I want to see more of a gap here at the top. And now I'm cranking down my pliers. And it's pulling the washer down and locking it in place. And there we are, the pick's done. This is the final product. You may find that you have different things that you need to do to make it stay on your arm better, or different things that you need to do to make it to fit better. But once you're here, this is it. The pick's done and you can use it. It'll rub up against the strings. Again, you know, like I mentioned earlier in this one's still a little loose for me. I need to tighten it down better, but that's not too bad. And then after this is on, if you find that this part slides too much, you can always just come back in with more thread and tighten down here, like we talked about. You just want to sew that in as tight as you can get it. Another thing that I found that works is taking like gaff tape and wrapping it above it and below it to keep it in place. Or you can use glue, you know, whatever means necessary. Figure out what works for you and make that, you know, try it out. Try different things. That's one of the biggest things that you can do with this. Thanks for watching the video. I hope that this helps you out, and please like and subscribe to my channel. Give us a follow, watch our other videos, watch the music videos if you get a chance, and thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you're having a great day.